Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the FIDE candidates. It's the 8th round of action as we have just crossed the halfway point, so all the pairings that we just had in the first half will repeat, but with all the colors reversed. So far, Jan Nepomniachtchi and Fabiano Caruana are running away with the event, and it's up to the others to stop them. We are going to see if in this round, such a thing could occur. The last move of the last game literally was played 30 seconds ago. I've been sitting here ready to go. Let's jump into today's games. Jan Nepomniachtchi with 5.5 points out of 7. Dominant. +4 in the first half. This has never, ever happened in candidates history, going up against Ding Liren, the pre-tournament favorite for a lot of bookmakers in chess. And those bookmakers should probably find other professions because they listed Nepo as like the 5th favorite. Nepo begins with e4. This is not a surprising first couple of moves. Ding Liren has a very powerful Spanish. He likes to go for martial positions with d5. He is a theory monster. Move 3 is already the first surprise in this game because Jan doesn't go for an Italian, he doesn't go for d4, he goes for knight c3. This opening is not something you play for a win at the top level. It's just not. The 4 knights is simply equal. It's actually not just equal, it's like a forced draw in many cases. So d4, and we have something called the 4 knights scotch because white played in the style of a scotch, but it's better to play the scotch with d4 with white if you're looking for an advantage. Jan plays into the top line, the most popular line, the line that's had all the theory, takes here, and something very funny happens here. Black can castle, and white actually can take a second pawn, but this would be insane because black would go bishop g4, rook e8, and the pressure here, because the white king has been left in the middle, is just overwhelming. So instead of that, Jan castles, and we have takes, and all of these moves have been played many, many times before, like thousands of times. Here we have our first break, knight back to d1, defending the pawn on b2. Black attacks the bishop here. Black doesn't have to attack the bishop. Like, black could develop this or block the pin and try to recapture like this. But instead of that, Ding says, please capture my knight and damage my pawn structure and give me the bishop pair. And Jan says, not only will I take your knight, I will actually trade queens with you as well, and then I will defend my pawn from any problems. Visually, white has a very nice position, but objectively, white has zero advantage. I mean, even though, you know, white has the 3 and 3 and a very nice bishop, maybe the knight will get to f5. Black is completely well known to be totally fine here. These pawns are a little split from the rest of the pack, and these pawns stand goofy, but king g7 protects everybody, and white just doesn't have the firepower. Like, if a queen could teleport down and go to h7, it would be mate. But white doesn't have that, right? So when teleporting is not a thing in chess. So f5. There's another plan here with bishop e6. Fabiano has played like this. Caruana, not right now. He's playing Hikaru. We'll get to that game. Yeah, he's played bishop e6, knight e3, and h5 with just various, I don't know, ideas. But in this game, we have a very forcing line. The pawn is attacked, the pawn moves. The knight jumps behind, attacking the bishop. The bishop takes it, the bishop takes it. The king comes to attack the bishop runs away. The black pawn goes to h5 with the intention of rook to g8 as well as h4, or rook to h8 as well as h4. All of that now happens. A bunch of pawns fall off the board, the rooks fall off the board, and the other pair of rooks fall off the board. And this is just a draw as the players shuffle and repeat moves. This is my shortest game recap of the candidates. 3.5 minutes. Usually, even any draw gets about 5-6 minutes of airtime. They didn't want to play today. I mean, it's not up to Ding, right? Like, Jan could have played the Italian. Jan could have played the Rui. Jan said, I'm in first place. I don't give a damn. I want to get some more sleep. I want to go watch the other games because I bet they're going to be exciting. I don't know. I mean, Jan just decided not to go into the martial, not test Ding Liren's Italian, because we've seen Ding Liren tested twice in the Italian. Duda tried, didn't get anywhere. Hikaru tried, got a 70-minute time advantage, but Ding played a perfect game, didn't lose. All right, you're not going to play the scotch, I guess. So can you blame Jan? He's in first place? All right, I guess not. Jan's going to, fight his battles another day. No worries. The next game that I have for you is Rapport versus Duda. Now, first things first, both these guys are coming off of losses. They're having rough events, 3 out of 7, 3 out of 7. Rapport shows up in a pink suit. Like, straight up. Like, my guy was just rocking a pink suit. I mean, some were saying it was salmon, some were saying it was orange, some were saying it was red. It was a pink suit. Like, he looked ready to go. I mean, he looked like he was gonna leave the game against Duda and go party. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the best nightclubs are in Madrid, but I can imagine, you know, they're probably popping. He goes for e4. Duda, you know, true and tried, Petrov defense. We're not gonna get a Stafford gambit. Report already begins thinking, by the way. And what he said afterward, believe it or not, is he showed up and he just was gonna make it up over the board. Like, it didn't work out yesterday, you know what I mean? So I'm just, yeah, that's it. I'm gonna go figure it out. Maybe he'll play a reverse Stafford gambit, you know, a Stafford gambit, but with white. But no, he plays the 4 knights. Oh God, we're gonna get d4, aren't we? No. g3. Ooh. This is very interesting. So it's like a King's Indian-esque style, you know? Playing like this, castling. Duda plays a very early a5. This takes us out of theory. Most people play like castles or some bishop move. I'm not there, but okay, a5. I mean, what are you gonna do? And then Report plays b3. I mean, I don't know what's going on here. Okay. Then he plays h3 to control the g4 square and also to get out of this diagonal and potentially move the king and play f4. This is a very standard attacking idea, is to play h3, king h2, move the knight and play f4. It happens oftentimes in reverse when you play the King's Indian defense with black, but in this case, you're kind of playing the King's Indian defense with white, which is the King's Indian attack because you're playing with white. So, knight to d4, bishop e3, and around this point, I was walking, I think I was getting my coffee in the morning, and commentators were a bit concerned. They thought that, you know, if he went bishop d4 and tried to get this pawn, Duda would get very quick center counterplay with d5, so it wasn't very clear what Report was going to do with this position. There's not a whole lot to do here, you know? Black is very solid. So, Duda decides, you know, not to keep the tension or slide out of the way. And then he decides, you know what, I'm going to take the knight and then I'm going to take the bishop. You know what? But in doing this, Report doesn't take back with the queen because he doesn't want d5, d4. Takes back like this, and this is his idea. But in this position, the move b5 is incredibly strong. Stockfish here thinks that white is doing, you know, absurd things like wearing pink suits yeah, I mean, Stockfish is like, look, you're playing like you're wearing a pink suit at the candidates. I mean, this is ridiculous. Where's your attack? Show me your attack. What, are you going to play g4? You think I'm scared of you, human? I'm going to play a4, which looks stupid. Like, what is a4? Just b4, right? Stockfish is like, come and get me. Literally, this is what Stockfish says, and it's -1. I don't know why. It's -1. I mean, queen g3, like, you're looking for some... Or rook b8. Stockfish is like, literally, do your worst. You can prepare everything you want. Get h4, get g5. There is nothing here. By the time you get everything ready, I will play g5 myself. All right? I'll do it myself if I have to. All right? Like a mobster movie. And then apparently white has no attack. Duda is not Stockfish. All right? So when he sees this coming, right? He sees all of this. It's brewing. Rather than just developing or locking the structure, he plays a human approach. He lashes out with h5 himself. But then here comes g5. So what did he want? Well, apparently g5 was a mistake. This is incredible. Apparently g5 was like, I mean, it's forced, but like, you know, you can play bishop f3 here, takes, etc. According to the machine, at first glance, when g5 is played, because, you know, if you get this, you're obviously super happy. But g5, this is possible. h4, it's an incredible idea. And if you take, you pin the pawn back to the queen, white's attack is completely stopped, queen takes g5, and that's it. You know, queens get traded, no attack. That's a draw, probably. But Duda does this and invites some trouble. All right, but okay, knight back to h7. And now Report's like, my bishop sucks, so let's trade it. Bishop takes h3, and now a very nice move, a Zwischenzug, a pink suit-wearing move. Rook g1, that is not a mouse slip. That is a threat of mate in 1. We've seen mate in 1 threatened a few times at the candidates tournament, and every single time, miraculously, who could have thought the players don't blunder it? But knight g5 is an exotic way to defend against it. Of course, you can just keep it simple here and play g6. Whatever it takes back on h3, and then, you know, this rook will come. Black can play king g7 just to support everything here. Knight f6. And then ultimately bring the rook around to h8 and actually attack white. Duda plays this way. He sacks the knight and rescues his bishop, and now he's like, well, you know, there's nothing here. I blocked his attack. But when the h-pawn moved, another file opened. Do you see the file that opened, folks? You say, well, what are you going to do? There's a king there. Right. I know. But just wait a second. Rook g2. Rook e7. Queen f3. Do you see where this is going? At some point, the H file opens up. And there are going to be 19 points of material barreling straight for the king down there who's in the bathtub. He's just in the bathtub. There was a moment here that apparently Duda could have went running. He could have went running with king to f8. And if the attack arrives on the f file, literally you can do this. And if the rooks stack, you can defend yourself. And if white continues to make threats, white just loses the queen. So that's not possible. And by the time white is ready to make a threat, the king is just ready to be evacuated. And trust me, the king is going to breathe a sigh of relief on b8 because the king is a beta in chess. All right, the only time the king is good is in king and pawn endgames. All right, opposition. So when the king is surrounded by bad and good pieces, oh, he just needs to hide. He's so weak. Can't do anything. Can't do anything at all. So the king had to run, but the king decided to stick around. Nobody accounted for king's safety here. And soon it was too late. A beautiful move, ignoring the threat on his knight, because this would come crashing open the H and F files with mate to follow. But also the knight sacrifices itself on e4, trying to open things up for the queen to arrive on f6 or h5. Actually, if you go to f6, maybe you don't actually win because rook g7. So you have to go to h5 when you have to get to h8. I was trying to get to h8 this way. That doesn't work, but queen h5 certainly does. Knight to e4, and the man who yesterday the world was talking about in that disastrous outing versus Jan Nepomniachtchi shows up in a pink suit, makes up an opening, and beats Jan Krzysztof Duda, and now is back in the top half. Welcome back, Richie Rapport. Chess is better when Rapport is slapping, his opponents around. Now, listen, I love Duda. I cheer for Duda. The Polish chess community cheers for Duda. The world cheers for Duda. But in the candidates, there's no friends. I mean, it is what it is. You know what I mean? I like when Rapport wins. Just in this case, unfortunately, it was against another good guy, but all of them are good guys. Rapport is back. And we're going to see if Duda can bounce back as well. The next game that I have for you took like 7 hours. This was a 93-move game before we get to the derby of the day, which was an amazing game in and of itself. Firouzja 2.5 and Rajabov 2.5. Firouzja trying to win his first game of the candidates. Rajabov hoping to get his first win in 3 years. Actually, Rajabov has not won a classical game since 2019. 36 games. And in this game, it was 93 moves. Firouzja tried. It was an Italian early on, a pianissimo, and a maneuvering one. You'll notice nowadays a lot of guys are playing a5, and gals, but in this tournament, guys, and they're preventing b4. But in this game, Rajabov allowed this. He allowed b4 and a4. It doesn't mean white is better, it's just a personal preference. Bishop e6, we have a trade, both sides castle, and now we have a typical Italian, where white tries to do stuff over here, and black, oh, you think you're a wise guy, tries to attack him on the king side. So, rook e1, and that's exactly what happens. Rajabov plants his horse on f4. The king, same, king h2 as you saw in that game, the game that we just looked at. Rapport. Queen f7. Now it's a bishopless game. All right, we just like horses, queens, and rooks here. And Firouzja tries to fight back a little bit over there, and then goes here with the intention of kicking out the knight and maybe taking over the initiative himself. We have this g3. The knight goes back. The king is safe. But apparently around here, there was a moment where, as we have a little knight dance, just give me a sec. All right, right here. There was a moment, knight could have gone to f4. And you might say to yourself, that's just a free knight. And I would say, you're correct. But then I take a pawn, and then I might get another one. You say, well, I'm not going to let you do that. Yeah, but then your knight is trapped. So Rajabov here could have put something on f4. But he chooses to be, do things over there first. And then we have another delicate dance. And we continue to have a delicate dance. All right? Pawns get traded. And now nothing gets traded for 10 moves. Alireza advances in the middle. All right? And now we have a dance. We have pieces dancing. Rajabov takes the A file. Firouzja takes the F file. All right? A little dance. Declining repetition. Trading knights. Okay? And a couple moves later, another trade. Okay? And now, folks, the next capture that happened was in 30 moves. As the players danced with their pieces. Oh, I apologize. I forgot there was a rook trade. Okay, 27 moves after this point. Apologies. After this point. Now, in chess, there's a 50 move rule. Okay, the 50 move rule is that if no pawns are pushed and no captures happen, it's a draw. So you can just shuffle your pieces back and forth. But, you know, there's ideas here. The ideas are, of course, that the A file is open. But if the white queen were to just, you know, wander off and try to do stuff over there, black would be very quick, you know, on the counterplay, and it would just be slaughter. So both sides have something to worry about. You know, black has a few weaknesses, and the second they advance, one of the other pawns gets weak. White has, obviously, to worry about the king. And you'll notice that everybody in white's position is literally defending the king, but also awaiting orders. You know what I mean? They're awaiting orders. What's next, boss? Well, what's next is that we are going to hit the forward button on this game until both sides have made 60 moves. Now they get the extra 15 minutes and bonus time. So the whole game, there's no plus 30 seconds. Now there are 30 seconds, but the shuffling continues. The regrouping continues. Will one side find a way through? Alireza finally gets an inaccuracy out of Rajabov. Queen to e8 apparently was inaccurate. You had to put the queen on f6. Did either player know that? God help them if they did. The audience pretends that they understand what the difference between queen 8 and queen f6 is as the eval bar spits out a number. But Alireza at some point will try to put a knight on g4 or advance this forward. And that's exactly what he tried to do. At this point, it was there was a tactic here. You know, his queen was pinned, but there was knight g4. Maybe he was thinking, but apparently knight c3 here is strong. If check, which seems like a fork, there is this with h5. But you don't have to do that. You also have g4. But none of that happened. None of that happened. There was a trade, and now Alireza finally got to induce a couple of weaknesses. c6 was the main one, and here it was +1. Stockfish was actually claiming that this was the most progress Firouzja had made, but they both have a minute. They have a minute on the clock here. It's move 77. What do you want from them? It's move 77. They got no time. Computer here, again, spits out nonsense. It thinks white should play h5. That is apparently a major necessity. And then there's like positions where the king can walk or stay here, depending on what black's coordination is. Excuse me. It's not clear if there actually is a win for white, because Stockfish doesn't always understand. It just thinks that there's something, but it doesn't always find it. You would have to, you know, dig deeper. And Firouzja, meanwhile, was really trying to induce Rajabov to kind of like come forward and create weaknesses, and he did. The problem is, by the time he did it, hit 30 seconds on the clock. They both got 30 seconds. They both made moves with 2 seconds, 1 second on the clock, hit the clock, 31 seconds on the clock. That means they played the move with 1 second or 2 seconds, and all of a sudden, one man turned the tables completely. And that man is Timur Rajabov, who in this position said, "Watch your mouth, young one, king f6. Oh my goodness, you reach, I teach. King f6, king g5, let's go, queen g3. Alireza with 10 seconds on the clock needs to find the coordination of pieces to make the draw and hold the game. Queen d1, king g... Oh my goodness, he's arriving. What are you going to do? You can't move your queen to h1 or e1 because queen f3, the rook slides out of the way. Queen f1 looks possible, but after de4, rook e4, queen e4. And the pawn endgame is lost. So he can't do that. He goes here, king h4, and Rajabov can still play on. He can actually play rook d7 and try to push. I mean, it's or even take and take, and I mean, try to like just beat everything up. It's insane position. But Rajabov chooses that he's also had enough. 93 moves this game was. And it just ended. 7 hours! But neither man able to break through. But if you made it this far in the video, ladies and gentlemen, if you made it this far in the video, this was the game to watch this round. Because Hikaru came to play. Oh, Hikaru is not 2706. I just have some numerical dyslexia, it seems. 2760. He just gained 54 points. No, I just made him 2606. Oh my goodness. Blooper reel. Blooper reel. This is so funny. Boop, boop, boop. My goodness, that rating just went all over the place. What a blooper. Anyway, Hikaru's come to fight. He needs to get revenge on Fabiano. If Hikaru comes to fight, that means Fabiano's going to play too. He's also playing for a win. So what happens? We have a Spanish. Fabiano chooses not to play the Berlin, but instead the Morphy defense, this position, castles. But now not bishop e7 in a closed Spanish. Fabiano Caruana grabs the pawn on e4. This is a favorite variation of one Shahryar Mamedjarov. After this move, black plays b5 and d5, holding together the center. We have the main line of action, which is, I don't know if bishop e6 is the main line, but yeah, I mean, we have a lot of theory here. I think it is the main line. Bishop c2, and Fabiano goes for the most cutting edge piece of theory that we've, I mean, that not from him that we've seen in this tournament, but he takes on f2. Like, this is an indication you're ready to go. Fabiano has played this himself with white. Jordan van Forest was black in that game in Tata Steel 2022, 5 months ago. So this, f6. If pawn takes, obviously black is gonna barrel down the f-file. So we have knight f1, allowing this capture, and now the king gets out of the way. So let's just take a deep breath. Black has 2 extra pawns and a rook. White has a bishop and a knight. 9 times out of 10, bishop and knight is better than the rook. Not here. No. Now it's really unclear what the heck's going on. But in all endgames, we're foreshadowing a long while. If this game gets to an endgame, white is going to be for choice. Black is currently relying on the fact that white's king is gasping for air because he had to do a little exercise, king f2, king g1, and black is just gonna, you know, come down here. Fabiano plays queen to d6 in this position. Queen d7 is a move, e4 is a move. This has all been played. Bishop e3, and here I think the game splits from that game between Fabiano and Van Forest. There's no h6, there's no e4, there's no rook 88, but bishop f5. Now this is one of the Leela's choices. I checked the database. Hikaru blitzes out bishop to b3. He does not capture the bishop. He goes here. Black defends. Queen slides over to e1 with ideas of this and pressure. The knight goes to g3 potentially, targeting this. Knight hits the bishop. And now we have queen f2 threatening this and this. Now both players have blitzed this thus far. Hikaru plays rook to e1. Fabiano takes his first think of the game. There's a lot of moves here, all right? According to the machine, the 2 best are bishop to d3, all right? And rook de8, sidestepping this attack and preemptively defending the potential, you know, hotspot pawn on the e5 square. Fabi plays this move, which is a huge error, apparently. And Hikaru doesn't spend any time and blitzes out knight g3 to continue the pressure on Fabi. Like, you're still in my prep. You know, you bastard, like I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna build this time advantage. But apparently, bishop g5 here is like crushing for white. And the idea is that you can do this rook e5, bishop f4. Now, maybe Hikaru's supercomputer is better than everybody's, okay? Maybe, for example, there's a line here, c4, apparently. Bishop d8, cb3, all right? The pawn goes down to a2, you lock away your rook, and then you play like queen a7. I mean, or queen e2. Now again, if you let the engine sit here, it might just straight up tell you to stop smoking whatever it is you're smoking. So maybe Hikaru knew this all along, but he plays knight to g3 and everybody was confused. Everybody was like, wait a minute, did he just mess up because he was trying to play his prep? I don't know. Maybe he's a genius. So he puts his queen on d2, and the bishop comes here, and now rook d7, and now it's time for chess. What the heck is this? What is going on? Who's trying to accomplish what in this position? I mean, black has a massive armada. If those pawns get rolling, it's bad news for white. White needs to find a way to configure the pieces, target weaknesses, and create problems. So he goes here, attacking the pawn. Black can defend it, right? Or push it. If you push it, the knight gets to d4, and the pawns are blockaded, and that's not what you want. Plus, who's going to deal with the bishop, right? So we have rook f7. You cannot take the pawn. f2 always hangs. So we have this move. This move is incredible. Knight to h1 is an absurd idea. And Hikaru was getting some serious cred from Stockfish. Like, you know, Stockfish was like, my man, he found it. The idea is that maybe in the long run, the knight will get to f2. So we have this. And now Fabiano, I mean, again, has just a million choices, like rerouting his own knight back toward the middle. King h8 is being recommended, which if you paid me money, I would not be able to explain to you. There's a lot of options, but he goes here. And here Hikaru once again finds Stockfish's top move, which is just, like if I tell you, you know my joke, you leave a super GM in a room unattended, what are they going to do? H4! he plays that. What? The idea of that move is twofold. Number one, you want to play h5 yourself and then potentially even h6 to weaken the position, but mostly it's gaining space. But there's a second idea, which could be to trade queens. And this queen trade is really annoying because this pawn hangs, and if you try to defend it, that square is mwah. And one of my pieces will find its way there at some point. Maybe I'll move my bishop, maybe I'll get my bishop there, right? So black's structure is frozen, the bishop is out of the game, maybe g4. I'll try to, Wreck-It Ralph your structure and trampoline into e6. So h4 played, we have knight c5, kick this out, bishop g4, and at this point after the queen trade, it became quite clear Hikaru was taking over the initiative. I told you something a long time ago, folks. I told you if this game makes it to an endgame, white is going to be winning. Because if black fails in the tactics, 2 pieces are better than a rook 9 times out of 10. I don't care if it's the damn candidates. I'm not lying to you. This is another one of those examples as black is frozen. There are no more concrete threats to the white king. Hikaru's gonna start eating the pawns. Fabiano is in big trouble here. And he's down like 40 minutes on the clock. He plays rook f5. Hikaru goes bishop c6. Rook h5, rook hf5. The rooks are still menaces. I told you, concrete threats. The only way, the e-pawn and rook f1 coming down, we block, b4, a4, and both players have made the 40th move. But here, Hikaru apparently had to be more aggressive with rook a1. He kicked the rook out first, but suddenly arrived the h-pawn, and it cannot be taken. If you take with this, you've suddenly surrendered the f3 square, and I told you the position is all about concrete threats. Now white is completely hopelessly lost. So you need to blockade the position. What do? The only move. Rook a2. Defending this. You cannot take with the knight, by the way. Rook f1 was coming down. So we have this move, and now, again, the only move. Bishop d1! And the idea of this move is there is no more rook f3, and I'm going that way, and I'm getting this as well, and your bishop is trash. I don't think he said that to him, but he's definitely thinking that. And all your pawns are blockaded. All your pawns are stopped at the port. All right, I've been watching a lot of Peaky Blinders, ports, references. Rook f6, and here comes the initiative, and Hikaru is in the driver's seat. Black has nothing. Nothing. Here comes king g3. Here comes bishop d4 blockading the rooks. Here comes the king. Here comes the bishop. And Hikaru is that's it. It's an avalanche forward. Rook d6. Knight e3 attacking the rook. The rook moves. Bishop c5. And at some point I'm going to be picking up some material. And right now I have come to collect. The rook has to sacrifice itself. Because if you try to keep it on the board even one more second, the king is going to get butchered by the angry army over here. Fabi takes on f5, king f5, the eval is +7, the game is over. e3 check, the pawn gets to e2, bishop f2, rook b8, and all Hikaru has to do here is play king to d4. If rook to e8, all Hikaru has to do is take the pawn, sacrifice like this, b5, cut this off, the pawn goes, it's over. But instead of that, Hikaru plays bishop to e1, and all of a sudden, this same plan no longer works. Because the king is going to get pinned, and there's threats, and the rook can go back to e6. It wasn't exactly clear what was the concrete reason, but something about abandoning the bishop on the e1 square didn't sit right with Hikaru, who didn't go to d4 here, and instead decided to go to f4. And Fabi, on the final move of the time control, hit him with g5, and Fabi is no longer lost. Oh my goodness. If you take, it's rook e5 check. If you move back, it's also rook to e5. Fabi gets 15 more minutes. Hikaru still maintains a 30-40 minute lead on the clock. Knight c7, rook f5. You can grab the pawn, but I'm coming down to f1, and it looks like you've stopped me, but my king is coming. And it's a fortress. This is a completely insane position. I don't remember if it's king to e6. It might be king to e7 to try to go there. But apparently black gets a defensive fortress here. Yeah, a fortress. Because the rook cannot escort the pawn. It's covered. It's insane. So instead of that, we have rook e6. Fabi doesn't see it. King f2, rook h6. Hikaru starts repeating moves. Hikaru's unsure of himself here, because again, if the king goes to d2, rook d6, problems. King f2, rook h6, knight e3, and Fabiano has a choice. Does he go to f1 like this, or does he go to f1 like this? And there is one massive difference between the two of them. If he goes rook h1 attacking on the f1 square, rook a1, you cannot take because I make a queen. King g3, rook g1, knight g2 is a defensive idea, but there is bishop to e4. Rook h1, there is knight g2, and here Fabi had to have seen cutting the king off to go g4 like this and make a little box, a coffin for the white king, if you will. A coffin for the white king, if you will. But Fabi goes this way, and now the king does not have to go into the coffin. The king breathes, and Hikaru defends his position and blockades the pawn with a knight. That is why the rook had to go to h1, because the king would have been put in the box on the h3 square. But this way, it's over. It's over. And on move 74, now that Hikaru's coordinated everybody, the power of the knight is felt. Fabi chose to resign here. All his pawns will fall. The game would have been maybe 90 moves had he wanted it to keep going. Hikaru Nakamura has just defeated Fabiano Caruana in round 8 of the candidates. Jan Nepomniachtchi is up top with 6 points out of 8. It is then Fabi with 5 and Hikaru with 4.5 and Report with 4. And tomorrow, Fabiano Caruana as white versus Nepo. Oh, good Lord, folks. If Fabi is able to beat Nepo tomorrow, oh, it's just beautiful chaos. Welcome back to the candidates.